The text messages on my wife's unlocked phone told me everything. 30 years of marriage meant nothing compared to the thrill of her affair with Vincent Larson. What caught my attention wasn't just their intimate exchanges, but their plans to use my own investments to fund their future together. I could have shouted or thrown things, but instead, I photographed the evidence and quietly replaced the phone exactly where I found it. At 62, after supporting Emma's career for decades and building what I thought was an unshakable partnership, I found myself facing not just infidelity, but calculated deception. What they didn't realize, my analytical skills hadn't dulled with retirement, and Vincent had just made the critical mistake of leaving evidence of securities fraud on my wife's phone. Their downfall would begin at next month's charity gala, where I'd be seated across from Vincent's unsuspecting wife, the perfect ally for what would become Denver's most talked-about revenge. I'd settled comfortably into retirement after 30 years as a financial analyst, finding rhythm in routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, I volunteered at the Veterans Center, helping former servicemen navigate retirement planning. My life had a pleasant predictability that suited me. That Wednesday morning followed the usual pattern. I prepared Emma's coffee, black with a dash of cinnamon, and set out her breakfast while she finished dressing for work. After 3 decades, these small gestures had become second nature. "Big presentation today?" I asked, noticing her selecting the pearl earrings I'd given her for our 25th anniversary. "The Westridge development proposal," she replied, checking her watch. "Vincent Larson's team will be there. His company's expanding again." I nodded, recognizing the name from investment newsletters. "Denver's Golden Boy developer. He's been building quite the empire." "He's brilliant," Emma said, with an enthusiasm that, in retrospect, should have given me pause. Forward-thinking, dynamic, not stuck in old patterns. I poured her coffee into a travel mug. "Well, good luck. I'll be at the club for lunch if you need me." She kissed my cheek quickly, the gesture as routine as my morning crossword. "Don't wait up tonight. These meetings always run late." As Emma hurried out, I noticed her phone on the counter. Unusual, as it typically seemed surgically attached to her hand these days. The first subtle shifts had appeared in our life about 3 months prior. Emma created new passwords on her devices, for security, she said. Her schedule became increasingly unpredictable, with late meetings consistently falling on my volunteer days. Small changes, easily explained, yet collectively forming a pattern I couldn't quite name. That afternoon at the Denver Country Club, Henry, the manager who'd known me for 15 years, approached my usual corner table. "Dining alone today, Mr. Carter. I saw Mrs. Carter here yesterday with her business associate. I assumed you might join them today." I maintained my composure, though my hand tightened slightly around my water glass. "Yesterday. Emma didn't mention lunch plans here." Henry's expression shifted to careful neutrality. "My mistake, perhaps. Tall gentleman, very well dressed. They've dined here several times recently." That evening, I reviewed our credit card statement, circling charges from restaurants I'd never visited. La Petite Maison, Marcello's, the Aspen Grill. Upscale, intimate settings, all charged on days I volunteered. When Emma returned home past 11, I casually mentioned the statement. "These restaurants, are they for client meetings?" "Of course," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "You know how business is these days. Always networking." "I don't recognize some of them." She sighed, placing her hand on mine with rehearsed patience. "Jonathan, we've discussed this. You're forgetting things lately. Remember last month when you couldn't find your glasses on your own head? Maybe you should see Dr. Michaels." The suggestion that my concerns reflected cognitive decline rather than her deception was so smoothly delivered that for a moment I almost doubted myself. That Saturday morning, Emma left for her weekly workout session, recently added to her routine. I was finishing the dishes when her phone chimed with a message notification on the kitchen counter. She'd forgotten it again, the second time that week, though previously she guarded it zealously. I hesitated, 30 years of trust weighing against mounting suspicion. The phone unlocked with a swipe. She hadn't reached it before the screen timed out. The message preview showed only, "Can't wait to see you." Hotel room confirmed for... My stomach tightened as I opened the full conversation with Vincent L. Tuesday, perfect. Jonathan volunteers until 2. Meet 11:30. Emma had written. Vincent's reply. Book the usual room. Brought you something from Chicago trip. I scrolled up, each message confirming what I'd suspected, yet hoped wasn't true. But it was the next exchange that transformed concern into cold clarity. Emma, sometimes I feel guilty. He's been good to me. Vincent, your boring, predictable husband had his time. Now it's ours. His old-fashioned values serve their purpose. We deserve this. Emma, you're right. And once the lakeside development launches with his investment, we'll have everything we need. I photographed the conversations methodically, including discussions about transferring my investments into Vincent's newest project, funds I hadn't authorized. Then I carefully returned the phone exactly as I'd found it. Standing in our kitchen of 30 years, surrounded by photos of our life together, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront Emma with emotional accusations. Instead, I'd verify every detail, document every deception, and plan a response worthy of the financial analyst I'd been, and still was. If they wanted to use my money to build their future, they'd learn that experience and patience were advantages they'd severely underestimated. Monday morning, with Emma at work, I transformed my home office into an investigation headquarters. Financial statements, investment documents, and property records covered every surface as I traced the path of our money, the evidence mounted with clinical precision. During my knee surgery recovery last year, Emma had used the power of attorney I'd granted her to transfer $200,000 from our retirement account into Vincent's lakeside development project. The authorization forms bore her signature and my name, scrawled while I was still groggy from anesthesia, a detail I'd forgotten until seeing the documents. I created a spreadsheet tracking every unauthorized transaction, discovering a pattern of increasing boldness. Small transfers at first, then larger sums as her confidence grew, all funneled into various Larson development projects. When I cross-referenced these investments with public property records, discrepancies emerged. The Westridge development claimed construction had begun on parcels still zoned residential. The Lakeside project's prospectus showed buildings where only empty lots existed. Classic securities fraud indicators, promising investors developments that existed primarily on paper. My phone rang, interrupting my analysis. Emma. Jonathan, I'll be late again tonight. Budget meeting with the executive committee. No problem, I replied, my voice betraying nothing as I stared at a credit card statement showing a charge at Marcello's restaurant scheduled for exactly when this budget meeting would occur. I'll find something to keep me busy. The calm in my voice surprised even me. Beneath it stirred something colder than anger, a methodical determination I recognized from my professional days when unraveling financial discrepancies. I had one more place to verify information. I tucked select documents into my briefcase and headed to the Denver Country Club. Henry, the club manager, welcomed me into his office with the discretion that had made him invaluable in his position for 20 years. "Mr. Carter, what can I do for you today?" I placed several receipts on his desk. "Henry, I'm organizing our tax documents. Could you help me understand these charges?" "They don't match my recollection." He examined the papers, discomfort evident in his posture. "These are from dates when Mrs. Carter was dining with her associate, Mr. Larson." "I see. And these charges to my membership account?" Henry shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Larson signed for those. We assumed it was authorized since Mrs. Carter introduced him as family. He said, and I quote, 'Emma arranged it. We're practically family.' The presumption staggered me, though I maintained my composed exterior. "How frequently have they been meeting here?" "Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past few months, always when you're volunteering, which struck me as—" He stopped himself. "As what, Henry?" "Unusual, sir, given your regular schedule." I nodded, my suspicion confirmed. "I'd appreciate copies of those receipts for my records, for tax purposes." "Of course, Mr. Carter." He hesitated. "Sir, I've known you for 15 years. If there's anything else—" "Thank you, Henry. That's all I need for now." As I left his office, I noticed Martin Reynolds in the main dining room, my former colleague from the SEC, now retired like myself. Our monthly chess games had dwindled during Emma's increasingly demanding schedule, another casualty of her affair I hadn't recognized until now. Seeing a potential ally, I changed course and headed toward his table. "Jonathan, good to see you." Martin stood to shake my hand. "It's been months. Join me?" I settled across from him, the weight of my discoveries temporarily lightened by familiar company. We exchanged the usual pleasantries before I carefully steered the conversation. "Still keeping your hand in regulatory matters?" I asked. Martin smiled. "Can't help it. Once SEC, always SEC. I consult occasionally. Keeps the mind sharp." He studied me. "Something on yours?" I removed several documents from my briefcase. "I've been reviewing some investments. Something struck me as interesting." Martin examined the lakeside development prospectus I'd provided, his expression shifting from casual to focused. "Larson Development. They're everywhere these days. Look at the reported construction status versus the property records." His eyes narrowed as he compared documents. "Classic discrepancies. Property still zoned residential, but they're claiming commercial construction is underway." He looked up sharply. "Where did you get this?" "I'm considering an investment," I said, the lie smooth enough. Something about the numbers seemed familiar from our SEC days. "Familiar indeed. This has fraud indicators all over it." He lowered his voice. "Jonathan, if you're invested with them—" "Purely theoretical interest at this point," I assured him. "Like you said, keeps the mind sharp." Martin studied me, unconvinced. "You know, Larson's presenting his newest development at the charity gala next month. Making a big splash with city officials and potential investors." "Is he?" "The kind of splashy event where people who ask too many questions aren't appreciated." Martin leaned forward. "But those who understand financial discrepancies might find it educational." I nodded, recognizing the subtle offer of alliance. I've always valued education, particularly when delivered at the right moment. As I left the club, the outline of a plan began taking shape, one requiring careful preparation and perfect timing. But first, I needed to know more about Vincent's personal life, particularly his wife. If my suspicions were correct, she might be as unaware of Vincent's deceptions as I had been of Emma's. "The Kensington Group dinner is tonight Emma reminded me, applying lipstick at our bedroom mirror. "The reservation's at 7. I nodded, adjusting my tie. The Kensington group included several business associates I'd known for years, making it a rare social event Emma still included me in. Looking forward to catching up with everyone. At the Capitol Grill, we were seated at a table with 3 other couples, including Richard and Marion Blake, who'd been friends since our early career days. "Jonathan, good to see you," Richard said warmly. "How's retirement treating you?" "Finding my rhythm," I replied, "though I miss analyzing market trends sometimes." Emma laughed, the sound practiced and performative. "Jonathan's being modest. He still reads investment newsletters like they're bestsellers." She touched my arm with rehearsed affection. "But you know how it is when men his age step back from their careers. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with how business works now." I noticed Marion's quick glance at Richard, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. "I think Jonathan's extensive experience gives him perspective many lack today," Richard said pointedly. "Some of these hot young developers could use his methodical approach." Emma's smile tightened. "Speaking of developers, did you see the write-up on Vincent Larson's Lakeside project? It's revolutionizing mixed-use spaces." Before anyone could respond, a familiar voice interrupted. "Did someone mention my project?" Vincent Larson stood beside our table, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Tall, with the confident posture of someone accustomed to commanding attention, he directed a practiced smile toward our group. "Vincent!" Emma's surprise seemed genuine, though I now recognized the slight flush in her cheeks. "What a coincidence." "The best kind," he replied smoothly, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a gesture too familiar for professional acquaintances. "I was having dinner with investors and saw you all here." He turned to me, extending his hand. "Mr. Carter, right? Emma speaks highly of your financial acumen." I shook his hand, noting the wedding ring tan line on his finger, though no ring was present. "Interesting. Emma rarely discusses me with colleagues." "Well, I hardly consider myself just a colleague," Vincent laughed, his eyes briefly meeting Emma's. "We've worked closely on several projects." I maintained my pleasant expression while cataloging every nuance of their interaction: the mirrored body language, the lingering eye contact, the shared secrets evident to anyone paying attention. When Vincent finally departed, Marion squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes conveying sympathy I wasn't supposed to understand. The following morning, I met Marion Blake for coffee at a small cafe downtown, safely distant from Emma's usual haunts. "Thank you for meeting me," I said, as we settled at a corner table. Marion covered my hand with hers, compassion evident in her expression. "Jonathan, how long have you known?" The direct question confirmed my suspicions. "About Emma and Vincent? Recently, though I've sensed something was wrong for months." She nodded. "Richard and I suspected since the Hendersons' anniversary party, the way they disappeared simultaneously, returned separately. But we weren't certain until recently." "Who else knows?" Marion hesitated. "The Thompsons, the Millers, a few others in our circle. We thought—" She paused, embarrassed. "You thought I knew? That we had an arrangement? Or that you were separating quietly? Emma's been so open about her criticism of you lately, calling you old-fashioned, out of touch." Marion's indignation showed. "After everything you did supporting her career." I absorbed this, my public humiliation now fully dimensioned. "And Vincent's wife? Claire, isn't it? Does she know?" "I don't think so. They rarely attend events together. He always has explanations for her absence. Business trips, family obligations." Marion leaned forward. "Jonathan, what will you do?" I'm still considering my options." I smiled reassuringly. "But I appreciate knowing the full picture." Later, in my car, I called David Thompson, whose financial firm occasionally partnered with Vincent's developments. "Jonathan," he answered cautiously, "how are you holding up?" "You knew about Emma and Vincent," I stated simply. His sigh confirmed it. "We suspected. Then Lisa saw them at the Brown Palace Hotel. Emma was wearing your mother's sapphire pendant, the one from your 30th anniversary." The detail struck unexpectedly hard. That pendant, my mother's, given to Emma as a symbol of welcoming her into our family, now worn during trysts with her lover. "David, what do you know about Vincent's business practices?" "Officially, he's Denver's development wunderkind. Unofficially," he lowered his voice, "there are rumors. Projects announced but barely begun. Properties flipped with inflated valuations. Nothing proven, but enough smoke to suggest fire." "And his wife?" "Claire, talented artist, keeps to herself mostly. Word is, they lead separate lives." "Why do you ask?" "Just trying to understand the complete picture." As our call ended, I stared at the Denver skyline, several of Vincent's developments visible among the buildings. My focus was shifting beyond the personal betrayal to something larger and potentially more consequential. Back in my home office, I consolidated my findings. Emma had set up Vincent as an investment consultant on our accounts, authorizing substantial fees that actually funded their luxury weekends. Credit card statements showed charges at high-end hotels on my volunteer days. The financial betrayal paralleled the personal one with methodical precision. More damning were the discrepancies in Vincent's developments. The Lakeside project claimed construction was 60% complete, yet satellite images showed only groundbreaking had occurred. The West Ridge development reported pre-sales of 80%, but property records showed minimal transactions. I called Martin, keeping my tone conversational despite my racing thoughts. "Remember our club discussion about Larson development?" I asked. "Been doing some digging myself," Martin replied. "Your instincts were right. Their last 3 projects show classic securities fraud patterns: overstated completion, phantom pre-sales, improper fund allocation. Hypothetically, what would the SEC need to open an investigation? Documented evidence of misrepresentation to investors, bank records showing fund diversions, proof of knowledge and intent." He paused. "Why? What are you thinking?" "Just curious about the process." Like you said, keeps the mind sharp. After hanging up, I stared at the evidence before me. What had begun as personal betrayal had evolved into something more significant. Vincent wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was potentially defrauding dozens of investors, including me. I needed one more perspective to complete my understanding. Opening my laptop, I searched for information about Claire Larson. Her gallery website showed impressive artwork focused on transformation themes. Several articles mentioned her limited public appearances with Vincent, attributed to her artistic temperament. What would she know about Vincent's business practices, about his affair with Emma? If my suspicions were correct, Claire might be as deceived as I had been, and potentially the perfect ally. I noted the upcoming charity art auction where her work would be featured. The event presented the perfect opportunity for our paths to cross, seemingly by chance. The Denver Arts Foundation's annual auction buzzed with Denver's elite mingling among artwork displays. I navigated the crowd with purpose, having donated generously to ensure my invitation. Across the room, I spotted Claire Larson standing beside her exhibited paintings, a striking woman with an observant gaze that suggested she missed little. I waited until she was momentarily alone before approaching, champagne flute in hand, as casual cover. "Your work is remarkable," I said, studying a canvas depicting a bridge half collapsed, half rebuilding. The simultaneous destruction and reconstruction speaks volumes. Claire turned, her expression guarded yet curious. "Thank you. Most people just say they like the colors." Transition States is an apt title. You've captured that moment when everything changes, when the old structure cannot stand, but the new one isn't yet formed. A genuine smile softened her features. "You actually read the artist's statement." "That's refreshingly thorough." "Jonathan Carter," I introduced myself, watching carefully for recognition. "Claire Larson," she replied, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Carter, you're invested in my husband's lakeside development, aren't you?" "Among others," I confirmed. "Your husband has quite the portfolio of projects." "So I'm told." Something in her tone suggested skepticism. "Vincent says you have quite the financial background yourself. Analytical mind, attention to detail." "Old habits from my analyst days," I acknowledged. "I still review investments thoroughly. The Lakeside project, for instance, has some interesting projections." Claire's posture shifted subtly. "Interesting how?" "Construction timelines seem ambitious given current zoning status." She studied me with new intensity. "You've researched the actual property records." "I like to verify information firsthand." "Not many investors do," she replied, lowering her voice. "Most take the glossy prospectus at face value." "I've never found glossy surfaces particularly trustworthy," I said, maintaining eye contact. "They often hide structural problems beneath." Claire glanced toward a nearby group that included several of Vincent's business associates. "Mr. Carter, I have a studio in the Arts District where I keep my financial records. If you have specific concerns about your investments, perhaps we could discuss them in a more private setting." I recognized the deliberate opening she was offering. "I think that would be prudent. Some financial matters require careful attention away from distractions." We exchanged contact information with the practiced casualness of people discussing art prices rather than potentially uncovering mutual betrayal. "Tomorrow afternoon?" she suggested. "Perfect timing," I replied. I look forward to gaining a clearer picture. As I departed, I noted Vincent's name prominently displayed on the gala sponsor wall, promoting his newest development, the same project funded partly with my diverted investments. The perfect venue for eventual justice was presenting itself. Claire's studio occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in Denver's Arts District. Large windows flooded the space with natural light, illuminating both her artwork and the meticulous organization of her business records. We sat at a small conference table where I carefully arranged selected documents. I decided to begin with financial evidence rather than personal betrayal, allowing Claire to process one deception before confronting another. "These are copies of investment transfers from my accounts to various Larson development projects," I explained, sliding the papers toward her. "Note the dates and authorization signatures." Claire reviewed them with evident financial literacy. "These transfers occurred during your recovery from surgery?" "Yes, when Emma had my power of attorney." Her eyes narrowed. "And you didn't authorize them?" "No." Claire opened a drawer and removed her own folder. "Compare them with these. Bank statements from our joint business account. Notice the deposit dates." The correlation was unmistakable. Funds from my accounts transferred directly into Larson Development, then large withdrawals to an offshore account within days. "Vincent claimed these were supplier payments," Claire explained. But when I contacted the suppliers directly, they had no record of receiving funds. I studied her carefully. "You've been conducting your own investigation." "For months," she confirmed. "The numbers haven't added up for some time. Properties purchased at one valuation instantly reported at triple the value. Construction reported as 60% complete when barely begun." She met my gaze directly. "But there's more to your inquiry than financial discrepancies, isn't there?" I hesitated, then decided complete honesty was necessary for true alliance. I placed Emma and Vincent's text messages on the table. Claire read them silently, her composed expression revealing nothing until she reached exchanges that mentioned meeting times and hotel arrangements. Only then did a slight tremor in her hand betray her emotion. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "About a month. You?" "I suspected for longer, but confirmed it only recently." She indicated a separate folder. "Credit card statements, hotel charges, gifts I never received." She looked up with dignity that resonated with my own approach. I needed to understand the full picture before deciding how to respond. As did I. Something shifted between us then, recognition of shared experience and similar methodical approaches to betrayal. "You haven't confronted Emma," Claire observed. "Yes, no more than you've confronted Vincent. Because there's more at stake than just the affairs," she said, connecting the pieces. "The financial fraud affects innocent investors, dozens of them." I nodded. "Precisely, and I believe we have complementary information that combined could address both the personal and financial betrayals." Claire studied me with new appreciation. "You're not just looking for divorce leverage. You're building a fraud case." "Justice on multiple levels," I confirmed. "But it would require careful coordination." For the first time, Claire smiled, not with happiness, but with the determined satisfaction of someone finding unexpected alliance in a difficult battle. "Mr. Carter, I believe we have much to discuss." Over the next hour, Claire revealed aspects of Vincent's operations I hadn't yet discovered. With her artistic background, I hadn't expected her financial acumen, but she explained her family's banking history had ensured her education included finance. "Vincent always assumed I was uninterested in the business details," she explained, pulling up computer files showing project timelines. "He thought my art consumed all my attention, which made it easy to access his records without raising suspicions." I examined her documentation, impressed with her thoroughness. "You have access to his presentation drafts?" "Complete with embedded slides for the charity gala next month. It's his moment to announce the Riverside Heights development, the largest yet, with city officials and major investors attending." The perfect opportunity crystallized in my mind. If we could access that presentation, we could insert the evidence slides at strategic points, Claire finished, following my thinking. The entire Denver business community would witness the truth simultaneously. We spent the next hour outlining possibilities, discovering our complementary skills. My financial evidence combined with her access to Vincent's business systems created a powerful alliance. "What about Vincent's son?" I asked, remembering David Thompson mentioning family complications. Claire's expression softened. "Michael's in his final year at Colorado State. Vincent pays his tuition but barely maintains contact. He'll be collateral damage in this through no fault of his own." "We should consider protecting him," I suggested. "Perhaps ensuring his tuition is secured before everything breaks." Claire studied me with new respect. "Most people in your position wouldn't think of that." "This is about justice, not vengeance," I replied. "There's a difference." "There is," she agreed quietly. We outlined our preliminary strategy. recognizing the charity gala as the perfect venue for exposure. Claire would access the presentation technology while I ensured regulatory officials attended. We'll need someone on the inside of the charity organization, I noted. Diana Markham, Claire suggested. She's the board director and has questioned Vincent's projects before. She might be receptive if approached carefully. As our planning session concluded, Claire walked me to the door. For a moment, we stood in silence, acknowledging the strange circumstances that had brought us together. "It's oddly freeing, isn't it?" she finally said. "Moving from victim to strategist. From reactive to proactive," I agreed. "Though I wouldn't have chosen this catalyst for change." "Nor I," she said. "But perhaps something worthwhile can emerge from it regardless." The connection between us, founded on shared betrayal but evolving into mutual respect, felt like the first authentic interaction I'd had in months. As I left her studio, I realized we'd created not just a strategic alliance, but the beginning of healing for us both. The Denver Community Foundation occupied a restored Victorian in the historic district. Diana Markham's office reflected her reputation for meticulous oversight, organized, elegant, and free of unnecessary ornamentation. "Mr. Carter, Ms. Larson," Diana greeted us with professional courtesy, though curiosity showed in her expression. "This is an unexpected meeting. What can I do for you?" "We're here about the charity gala," I began. "Specifically, Vincent Larson's presentation." Diana's posture shifted subtly. "Vincent's presentation is the centerpiece of the evening. His Riverside Heights announcement includes substantial donations to the foundation. We believe there are significant issues with that project that should concern the foundation," Claire said carefully. Diana studied us both, her experienced eyes noting our unlikely alliance. "What kind of issues?" I placed a folder on her desk. "These documents show discrepancies between reported development status and actual property conditions. The Riverside Heights project, like previous Larson developments, appears to misrepresent fundamental aspects to investors." Diana reviewed the documents, her expression shifting from skepticism to concern. "These property records show minimal development, yet their promotional materials claim construction is well underway." "There's more," Claire added. "The investor funds are being diverted to accounts unrelated to actual construction." Diana looked up sharply. "That's a serious allegation. Have you taken this to the authorities?" "We wanted to approach you first," I explained. The charity gala provides an opportunity to address this situation in front of those who need to know: investors, city officials, and yes, regulatory authorities who will be present. "You want to expose this at the gala?" Diana's tone reflected both alarm and interest. "During Vincent's presentation?" "We need access to the presentation system," Claire confirmed, "to ensure the accurate information is displayed at the appropriate time." Diana leaned back, considering the implications. Several board members have questioned Vincent's rapid expansion. Last month, Senator Williams mentioned concerns about proper permitting processes. She tapped her fingers thoughtfully. "But using the gala as an exposure venue is unprecedented." "Sometimes unprecedented problems require unprecedented solutions," I noted. "The foundation cannot be directly involved in something like this," Diana said firmly. "However," she opened her desk drawer and removed an access card. "Our technical team prepares all presentations in advance. Jason Mitchell leads that team. He'd be the person to talk with about any technical adjustments needed for optimal display of information." She handed Claire the card with deliberate care. "I trust that whatever occurs during the gala will be factually accurate and in the public interest." "Absolutely," I assured her. "Everything presented will be thoroughly documented." As we stood to leave, Diana added, "I'll make certain the guest list includes individuals with appropriate regulatory oversight responsibilities. For networking purposes, of course." "Of course," Claire replied with subtle appreciation. "The Foundation always facilitates valuable connections." Outside Diana's office, Claire and I exchanged a glance of cautious optimism. Another piece of our plan had fallen into place. "Jason Mitchell," Claire noted. "I know his work. He's thorough and discreet." "Perfect," I replied. Now we need to ensure Martin brings his SEC contacts. Our next steps were clear. Preparation, coordination, and perfect timing would transform private betrayal into public accountability. Claire's technological expertise surprised me yet again as we worked with Jason Mitchell in the Foundation's media room 3 days before the gala. Her architectural background made her the perfect liaison, discussing optimal visual presentation while actually arranging for our evidence to appear at strategic moments. "Vincent's presentation follows this sequence," Jason explained, displaying the slides on a large monitor. Introduction of prior developments, transition to Riverside Heights announcement, investment opportunity overview, and community impact conclusion. Claire nodded professionally. "The resolution on these architectural renderings needs enhancement. And the financial projections would benefit from supporting documentation slides." "We can integrate those," Jason agreed, unaware of our true intentions. "If you provide the supplementary materials, I'll ensure they appear at the appropriate points." I observed silently as Claire maneuvered the conversation with remarkable skill, securing our access while maintaining the appearance of simply improving Vincent's presentation. Once Jason stepped out to take a call, Claire quickly inserted our carefully prepared slides into the presentation file. Property records showing undeveloped land labeled as construction 80% complete. Bank records demonstrating fund diversions, and finally, evidence of Emma and Vincent's role in transferring my investments without authorization. "The transitions are seamless," she murmured, checking the flow. "He won't notice until they appear during the actual presentation." "And the documentation packets?" I asked. "Ready for distribution to key attendees," she confirmed, including highlights of the evidence with supporting documentation. When Jason returned, Claire had restored the display to the original slides. "Everything looks excellent," she told him. "Vincent will be pleased with the technical quality." "That's our goal," Jason replied. "Everything running smoothly behind the scenes, so the presenters shine." If only he knew the true meaning his words would take on gala night. Later, in Claire's studio, we finalized our preparation, reviewing the attendee list Diana had provided. "Martin has confirmed his SEC contacts will attend," I noted, including Sarah Chen, who specializes in securities fraud investigations. "And I've ensured copies of all evidence will be available for immediate distribution," Claire added, indicating neatly prepared folders. "Once the presentation reveals the discrepancies, these will provide the complete documentation." I studied our work with satisfaction. "So what about Emma? How are you handling seeing her at the event?" Claire's expression remained composed, though her eyes revealed deeper emotions. "The same way you'll handle seeing Vincent, I imagine, with the dignity they failed to show us and the patience to let justice unfold naturally." Her response resonated with my own approach, measured, controlled, and ultimately more powerful than emotional outbursts could ever be. "There's one more detail," Claire said, opening a final folder. "Michael's tuition. I've established a separate account that Vincent can't access. It contains enough to complete his education, regardless of what happens to Vincent's assets." I nodded with approval. Ensuring innocent parties aren't punished for others' actions. That's important. As our preparation concluded, Claire hesitated before asking, Are you ready for this? For everything to change? I've been ready since the moment I saw those text messages, I replied honestly. The question is, are they ready for the consequences of their choices? The evening before the gala, Martin and I met at a quiet restaurant away from Denver's social hubs, confirming the final elements of our plan. Sarah Chen and 2 other SEC investigators will attend, Martin assured me, positioned as interested financial community members. They've reviewed the preliminary evidence I provided and are taking it very seriously. Good. They'll have comprehensive documentation tomorrow night. I slid a thumb drive across the table. This contains everything: property records, bank transfers, investment misrepresentations, enough to launch a formal investigation. I'll continue with the story, picking up exactly where it left off. Martin pocketed the drive with practiced casualness. The timing needs to be perfect. Chen will watch for your signal before taking official action. Claire has coordinated with the technical team. The evidence slides will appear seamlessly within Vincent's presentation. Property records when he discusses development progress, bank transfers when he mentions investment security. And Emma? Martin asked carefully. How are you handling that aspect? I maintained my composed expression. She'll be seated prominently as Vincent's key advisor on the project. Her involvement in the unauthorized transfers will be documented in the presentation. Martin studied me with the insight of a longtime friend. This isn't just about financial fraud for you, Jonathan. No, I acknowledged. But personal justice and legal consequences happen to align perfectly in this case. After our meeting, I called Claire to confirm final details. Everything's in place, she assured me. Diana has arranged seating to ensure maximum visibility for key attendees. The evidence packets are ready for distribution immediately after the relevant slides appear. And you? I asked. Are you prepared for tomorrow? There was a brief silence before she answered. I've been preparing for this moment since I found the first discrepancy in our accounts. Tomorrow isn't an ending. It's a beginning. Her perspective resonated with my own evolving view. What had started as a response to betrayal had transformed into something more meaningful, a reclamation of dignity and a step toward whatever came next. That night, I laid out my suit for the gala, the same one I'd worn to my retirement celebration 3 years ago, when Emma had toasted my meticulous attention to detail as my greatest professional strength. Tomorrow, that same quality would serve a purpose neither of us could have imagined then. My phone chimed with a text from Claire. Everything in place. Tomorrow, we get our lives back. Not just back, I thought. Forward. The Denver Community Foundation's annual charity gala transformed the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton into a showcase of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers illuminated Denver's elite, mingling among displays of Larson Development's projects, with the Riverside Heights model as the centerpiece, an architectural marvel of glass and steel that existed primarily on poster boards rather than actual land. I arrived precisely on schedule, nodding to Diana Markham near the entrance. Her subtle nod confirmed our arrangements remained intact. Jonathan! Emma's surprise at seeing me was evident as I approached our assigned table. I didn't realize you were attending. The Foundation's work has always been important to us, I replied pleasantly, kissing her cheek with practiced ease. Besides, Vincent's presentation is the highlight of the evening. I wouldn't miss it. Emma's smile faltered slightly. Of course, I just thought, with your knee bothering you lately. Some events are worth a little discomfort, I assured her, noting Martin and his SEC colleagues at a nearby table. Across the room, Claire entered separately, elegant in understated black that contrasted with the flashier attire of most attendees. She acknowledged me with the barest nod as she took her seat near the presentation screen, a position Diana had arranged for optimal viewing. Vincent worked the room with practiced charm, moving from group to group, his hand occasionally touching Emma's back with proprietary familiarity when they converged. His confidence was absolute, unaware that within 2 hours his carefully constructed world would collapse. "Quite the turnout," remarked Senator Williams, joining our table. "Vincent's developments have certainly captured attention." "Indeed they have," I agreed, noting several regulatory officials among the attendees. "His projects seem to progress remarkably quickly." "The secret to success in this business," Vincent interjected, appearing behind us with perfect timing. "While others are still securing permits, we're breaking ground." He clasped my shoulder with false camaraderie. "Jonathan here knows the value of strategic investment, don't you?" "Absolutely," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I believe in seeing returns on my investments." "Tonight's announcement will exceed expectations," Vincent promised, winking at Emma. "Some of us understand the future of development in ways others can't quite grasp." The presumptuous dismissal might have stung weeks ago. Now it simply confirmed the rightness of what was about to unfold. As the lights dimmed for dinner, I exchanged a final glance with Claire, who was speaking quietly with Jason at the technical control table. Everything was in position. The master of ceremonies approached the podium as servers delivered the first course. "Ladies and gentlemen, after dinner, we're honored to have Vincent Larson present the exciting Riverside Heights development and announce Larson Development's generous contribution to the Foundation's community initiatives." The applause that followed would be the last moment of Vincent's unchallenged triumph. After dinner and the Foundation Director's preliminary remarks, Vincent took the stage with characteristic confidence, his smile reflecting absolute certainty in his position. "Distinguished guests, valued investors, and community partners," he began, the large screen behind him displaying the Riverside Heights logo. "Tonight represents the culmination of years of vision and development expertise." I watched Emma's proud expression as her lover commanded the room's attention. She had no idea that her messages to him would soon appear on that same screen. Larson Development has transformed Denver's skyline with innovative projects delivered on time and on budget, Vincent continued, advancing to a slide showing previous developments. The Westridge and Lakeside projects have redefined urban living while providing exceptional returns to our investment partners. On cue, the slide transitioned, not to Vincent's planned image of the Westridge building, but to property records and satellite imagery showing vacant lots where completed construction had been claimed. Vincent faltered momentarily, then continued with professional smoothness, assuming a technical glitch. "As you can see, our development model accelerates." The next slide displayed bank records, showing investor funds being transferred to offshore accounts, with both Vincent and Emma's authorization signatures highlighted. Murmurs spread through the audience. Vincent tapped his presentation remote repeatedly, trying to advance past the unexpected slides, but Claire's technical preparation ensured the evidence remained displayed. "There seems to be some technical confusion," Vincent attempted, his composure cracking. "If we could—" The screen changed again, this time showing text messages between Vincent and Emma discussing how to use my investments without my knowledge, alongside transfer authorizations bearing Emma's signature during my knee surgery recovery. I watched Emma's face drain of color as she recognized her own words projected for everyone to see. Across the room, Sarah Chen was already on her phone, her expression confirming official wheels were beginning to turn. Vincent abandoned his presentation entirely, striding toward the technical booth where Claire stood watching with calm dignity. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Before Claire could respond, Diana Markham approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we're experiencing technical difficulties. However, these documents raise concerning questions about the representations made regarding Larson development projects." She gestured to Foundation staff, who began distributing the evidence packets Claire and I had prepared. "In the interest of transparency, we're providing documentation supporting the information displayed. Our community deserves complete accuracy regarding investments and developments." Senator Williams, reviewing the materials with growing alarm, signaled to his staff. Two regulatory officials approached Vincent, now arguing heatedly with the technical team. Emma hurried to my side, her voice a desperate whisper. "Jonathan, what is happening? What have you done?" "Nothing that wasn't justified by what you both did first," I replied quietly. "Every document displayed is authentic, including your text messages and unauthorized transfers." Her face crumpled with the realization that her deception was now completely exposed. "I can explain." "I believe the evidence speaks for itself," I said, standing as I noticed Sarah Chen approaching Vincent with two colleagues. "If you'll excuse me, I believe the SEC representatives may have questions about our investments." The ballroom had transformed from celebration to controlled chaos. Small groups huddled in intense discussion, reviewing the evidence packets. Vincent was cornered by SEC officials, his lawyer already arriving in response to an urgent call. Emma sat alone at our table, avoided by former friends who now understood their role in her deception. I made my way toward Claire, who stood watching the scene with composed satisfaction. "Perfectly executed," I said quietly. "The technical aspects were relatively simple," she replied. "The emotional ones, less so." We observed as Vincent was escorted from the ballroom for preliminary discussions with regulatory officials. His face, when he glanced back and saw us standing together, showed the first dawning recognition of the alliance that had brought him down. "Jonathan," Emma's voice behind me was strained as she approached, "we need to talk, privately." "I don't believe privacy serves either of us anymore," I responded calmly. "Transparency seems more appropriate given the circumstances." "You've humiliated me in front of everyone," she hissed, composure cracking. "An interesting perspective," Claire interjected, "considering the messages we all just read." Emma stared at Claire with sudden comprehension. "You two planned this together." "With the same care and consideration you and Vincent showed us," I confirmed. Diana Markham approached, her professional mask firmly in place despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Mrs. Carter, the SEC representatives would like to speak with you as well. Something about unauthorized financial transfers during your husband's medical recovery." As Emma was led away, several longtime friends approached me with expressions ranging from sympathy to admiration. "Jonathan, we had no idea about the financial improprieties," David Thompson assured me. "If we'd known..." "What's important is that the truth is clear now," I replied, "for everyone affected by Vincent's schemes." Martin joined us, satisfaction evident in his expression. "Chen says they have more than enough to open a formal investigation. Securities fraud charges are likely, given the documentation." Throughout the next hour, Claire and I accepted quiet acknowledgments from community members who had witnessed the exposure. We maintained dignified composure, neither gloating nor appearing wounded. As the event wound down, I found myself standing beside Claire near the exit. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Justice takes its course," I replied. "The SEC investigation will proceed. Investors will be protected where possible. Vincent and Emma will face consequences proportional to their actions. I meant for us, Claire clarified. I considered her question thoughtfully. I believe that's something we get to decide for ourselves, for the first time in longer than I realized. Perhaps we could discuss possibilities, she suggested. Not tonight, but soon, when the dust settles. I'd like that, I agreed, feeling an unfamiliar but welcome sense of potential. As we parted ways outside the hotel, the night air felt clearer than it had in months, as if the exposure of truth had purified more than just financial records and romantic betrayals. It had cleared a path forward. 3 weeks after the gala, I sat in my new apartment overlooking Denver's city park. The space was smaller than the home Emma and I had shared, but it felt more authentically mine: clean lines, organized bookshelves, and windows that welcomed morning light. My phone rang, displaying Michael Larson's number. Vincent's son had reached out after news of his father's arrest for securities fraud made headlines. "Michael, good to hear from you," I answered. "Mr. Carter, I wanted to thank you," he said, his voice reflecting maturity beyond his 22 years. "Claire told me what you both did to protect my tuition fund." "You're not responsible for your father's actions," I replied. "Your education shouldn't suffer for his choices. Still, you didn't have to think of me at all. Most wouldn't have." He paused. "Dad's not speaking to me since I refused to provide character testimony. He doesn't understand why I won't support him after what he did." "Sometimes the hardest boundaries to establish are with family," I observed. "But they're often the most necessary." After our call ended, I received an email notification from my attorney. The divorce proceedings were progressing efficiently, with Emma offering no contest to the financial terms. Her attempts at reconciliation had been brief and transparently self-serving, focused on potential leniency in the fraud investigation rather than genuine remorse. I didn't know about the extent of Vincent's fraud, she'd claimed during our last conversation. I was manipulated too. "The text messages suggest otherwise," I'd replied calmly. "But the courts will determine accountability." The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Claire stood in the hallway, holding a small portfolio. "Is this a good time?" she asked. "Perfect timing," I assured her, welcoming her inside. Over coffee, she shared updates on the expanding investigation. 3 more Larson projects are being examined for similar patterns. The Denver Business Journal is calling it the most significant development fraud case in a decade. And Vincent? Out on bail, but effectively finished in this community. His remaining assets are frozen pending investigation. She opened her portfolio, removing several documents. "I've been approached about purchasing the lakeside property for an actual development, one that will be built according to transparent specifications and proper permits." I reviewed the proposal with professional interest. The structure looks sound, realistic timelines, proper disclosures. "I'd like your opinion on the financial projections," Claire said. "Your analytical experience would be valuable." The request acknowledged my expertise without reference to recent betrayals, a refreshing change that recognized me for my capabilities rather than as a victim of deception. "I'd be happy to review them," I agreed. "Actually, I've been considering some consulting work. Nothing full-time, but enough to keep my skills sharp." "Perfect partnership," Claire suggested with a small smile. "Your financial analysis, my architectural background." The idea of collaboration based on mutual respect and complementary skills felt right in a way few things had recently. "To new beginnings," I said, raising my coffee cup. "Built on solid foundations," Claire added, completing the thought with architect's precision. 2 months later, The Denver Financial Oversight Committee hosted a community forum on investment protection. I had agreed to participate on a panel discussing securities verification practices, using the Larson development case as an instructive example without naming specific individuals. The auditorium was filled with community members, many of whom had been affected by Vincent's schemes. I recognized former friends and colleagues, including several who had known about Emma's affair without warning me. The most effective protection against investment fraud, I explained to the audience, is verification through multiple independent sources. Property records, permit status, and construction progress should all align with developer claims. Martin, serving as panel moderator, added, Mr. Carter's thorough documentation was instrumental in identifying discrepancies that might otherwise have continued undetected. After the panel, several investors approached to express gratitude. Your evidence saved my retirement fund, an elderly gentleman told me, shaking my hand firmly. I was about to double my investment in Riverside Heights the week after the gala. Diana Markham joined our conversation, her foundation now leading community restoration efforts. Jonathan has agreed to serve on our financial advisory board, she announced. His experience will help establish stronger verification protocols for development partnerships. I noticed Claire entering the auditorium, having finished her own presentation in an adjacent room on ethical architectural practices. Our eyes met across the space with quiet understanding. News about Emma arrived periodically through mutual connections. She had left Denver, reportedly relocating to Phoenix to start over. The SEC had included her in their investigation, focusing on her role in unauthorized transfers during my recovery. The consequences she faced were proportional to her actions, significant but not destroying. As the event concluded, Claire and I walked through downtown Denver, passing several buildings bearing the Larson Development logo, now undergoing ownership transitions as assets were liquidated to compensate investors. Strange to see physical reminders, Claire commented. They'll be rebranded eventually, I noted. Structures remain while names change. Speaking of change, Claire said, hesitation evident in her voice, I've been thinking about our discussions regarding consultation partnership. As have I admitted. It feels like the right next step, professionally speaking. And personally, she asked, directness I'd come to appreciate characterizing her question. I believe in building carefully, I replied thoughtfully, with proper foundations and realistic timelines. Her smile acknowledged the deliberate use of architectural metaphor. Measured progress with thorough verification at each stage? Exactly, I agreed, returning her smile. A structure worth creating is worth creating properly. As we continued walking, our pace aligned naturally, unhurried yet purposeful, much like the careful rebuilding of our respective lives. The mountain view from my office window provided perspective, both literal and metaphorical. In the years since the charity gala exposure, much had changed, while core principles remained constant. The Denver financial integrity consulting practice I'd established with Claire had gained reputation for thorough verification of development projects. We'd partnered on 6 major initiatives, each completed with transparent documentation and realistic projections. My desk held photos from recent months, a fishing trip with Martin, dinner with friends who had stood by me during the divorce, and Claire's gallery opening where her Transition States series had earned critical acclaim. A knock at my door preceded Claire's entrance, tablet in hand. The West Ridge property redevelopment proposal is ready for review, she announced. Much more realistic than Vincent's original fantasy. The property, once the centerpiece of Vincent's fraud, was being legitimately developed by new owners who had specifically sought our verification services, a satisfying form of restoration. "How was your lunch with Michael?" I asked, noting she'd just returned from meeting Vincent's son. "Good. He's finished his degree and received 3 job offers." Claire settled in the chair opposite my desk. "He asked about Vincent. Still maintaining his innocence despite the evidence?" "Apparently, though the testimony from 4 former employees has essentially guaranteed conviction." She set aside the tablet. "Michael's making peace with having a father who refuses accountability." "Not everyone learns from consequences," I observed. "Some simply resent them." We worked through the afternoon, our professional rhythm established through months of collaboration. As evening approached, Claire closed her laptop with finality. "Dinner?" she suggested. "That new place on Pearl Street?" "Sounds perfect." As we prepared to leave, I noticed an email notification. The final divorce decree had been processed, officially ending my marriage to Emma. The timing seemed fitting somehow, a chapter conclusively closed as new ones continued opening. "Everything all right?" Claire asked, noticing my momentary pause. "Yes," I replied truthfully. "Just one more transition completed." She understood immediately, her hand briefly touching mine. Our relationship had evolved gradually over the past year, beginning as allies against betrayal, developing into professional partners, and slowly, carefully exploring more personal connection. We moved at a measured pace that respected our experiences and prioritized authenticity over urgency. "I was thinking," Claire said as we walked to the restaurant, "about that rental property near Washington Park." "The Craftsman with the garden," I clarified. "It has 2 home offices, excellent natural light, and is actually available next month," she noted, her casual tone belied by careful attention to my response. I considered the implication, a shared space, a definitive step forward. "Worth investigating further," I agreed, "with proper due diligence, of course." "Of course," she laughed softly. "We are nothing if not thorough." As we discussed possibilities, I reflected on the unexpected journey of the past 18 months. What began with devastating betrayal had transformed into something neither Emma nor Vincent had anticipated, not just consequences for their actions, but growth beyond them. The best revenge wasn't the public exposure or legal consequences, satisfying though they were. It was discovering that betrayal marked not an ending, but a beginning, one that led to more authentic relationships, renewed purpose, and the confirmation that experience and wisdom were indeed valuable advantages in life's most challenging moments. Sometimes, life's most painful betrayals contain unexpected gifts, not because the betrayal itself has value, but because our response to it reveals strengths we didn't know we possessed. When Emma and Vincent violated my trust, they believed my age made me vulnerable. Instead, it gave me patience, perspective, and the wisdom to pursue justice rather than mere vengeance. What I've learned through this journey might resonate with many of you who have faced similar challenges. The pain of betrayal is real and deserves acknowledgement. But dignity comes not from avoiding life's hardships, but from how we move through them. When boundaries are crossed, the most powerful response isn't explosive reaction, but methodical action, using truth as your primary weapon. I discovered that experience isn't the liability younger generations sometimes suggest. It's a tremendous asset when life demands strategic thinking and emotional fortitude. The very qualities Emma and Vincent dismissed as old-fashioned, thoroughness, documentation, professional networks built over decades, became the architecture of accountability they couldn't escape. Perhaps most significantly, I learned that new beginnings can emerge from endings we didn't choose. Claire and I built connection based on mutual respect and shared values, proving that authentic relationships can follow betrayal when we remain open to possibility without abandoning discernment. For those facing their own crossroads of betrayal or disrespect, remember that your life experience is valuable currency in a world that often underestimates wisdom. Patience, strategic thinking, and dignity under pressure aren't outdated values. They're powerful tools for navigating life's most challenging moments. Share your story of dignity maintained through life's betrayals, because wisdom deserves to be honored, especially when it's earned through adversity.